All right, hello everyone. Welcome to episode 84 of Going Live with Good Soil. Sorry for the delay this morning. We had some technical glitches. Usually Matt's at fault, and I'm usually quick to blame him for his technical prowess of audible stuff. But this time I think it was actually Twitter Spaces. Somehow the first instance of Twitter Spaces was not connecting him as a speaker. He kept disconnecting, reconnecting, and so we just canceled it and started again, and it works fine now. So yeah, Twitter Space is one of the features or parts of Twitter that hasn't gotten much love yet from Elon in terms of feature enhancements or improving it. He's participated a couple times, but the actual technology of Twitter Spaces is still very glitchy. So hopefully they make that a priority. I think there's a nice window of opportunity to make Twitter Spaces a serious feature of Twitter if they can improve it. So, Matt, the big thing this morning, other than Tesla being back above 200, which is great. But the CPI print came in a little, I guess, slightly hotter than expected. Everyone kind of expected it to be hot. It seems it came in around expectations after the last few days. People sort of expected it to be a little hotter, right? I mean, the month over month, the annual CPI was a little higher than people expected. And that sort of confuses me. It shows how numb I heard, how much of a numbskull I am to the actual macroeconomic indicators like the CPI and such, because, I don't understand how the, month over month could be like in line with expectations, let's say, but then the annual rate is actually higher. Like, does that mean they're adjusting previous months at the same time? And that makes it, it doesn't make sense to me. Do you understand that part or what
No,
am I
so I
missing?
actually I didn't catch up. I didn't catch on that that piece of it, that there was a difference in expectations between the annual and the month over month. Because you're right, like the prior month should be known, and so that doesn't make any sense to me. But I hadn't heard that before, so I'd have to withhold judgment until I actually saw the figures that you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but Matt's audio quality on Twitter Spaces is pretty bad, cutting in and out significantly. But on YouTube Live, I bet you sound fine. Is that right, Alec? On YouTube Live, Matt sounds okay. Alec will tell us in the chat. Yes, he sounds fine. All right, Matt. Maybe I don't know if there's anything on your end, but it's like cutting in and out on the Twitter Spaces. I don't know if it's Twitter Spaces. If it's Twitter Spaces itself, we'll have to abandon it and just go to focus on YouTube Live in a minute. But I mean, I guess just what were your thoughts, or just give us some more of your thoughts on the CPI, and we'll see how the quality is in your thoughts on the CPI here.
Yeah, and I just switched my connection over to a different Wi-Fi network, so hope that helps improve it.
Much better, much better.
All right, that technical
All right.
issue you can probably blame on me, but yeah. So the CPI, I was expecting it to come in a
We
little bit
lost
lower.
you, Matt. We lost you.
How does this
I don't
keep
know.
happening?
That technical issue did not. It worked for temporarily, and then it's turned off on YouTube Live. Are you still able to hear Matt? Because if you're still able to hear Matt on YouTube Live, I think we're just going to abandon the Spaces and go to YouTube Live, because today Spaces is just too glitchy. Still fine on YouTube. All right. Well, we're going to have to close the Spaces. Anyone who wants to listen, go to YouTube Live or channel. We're continuing on there. Sorry about that. Twitter Spaces, we need you guys to improve things. Sorry. Okay. Bye. All right, Matt, I turned up my volume. Turn up your volume on there so you can hear me still. All right. Can you hear me okay, Matt?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
All right. You're just fine now.
How's
All
the
right.
connection
Now
now?
we're
It's a
here on
little better?
YouTube Live. Sorry, YouTube Live audience. You're just as important or more important than the Twitter Spaces audience. That's like our second child, and we just had to abandon it. Sorry. Okay. So,
Wow, very significant. Yeah, so 11 minutes of nothing. Sorry to everybody about that. You asked about my kind of read on the inflation. I was expecting that it would have come down. We had the 0.1% last month, and it was negative on core, I believe. No, it was negative on the overall, and it was a little bit higher on core last month. And that kind of annualized out to a rate of around 2% a year. And so it seemed that if you're looking at the month over month figures, that inflation is a lot more in check than maybe the Fed or Jerome Powell was making it seem out to be. But you've got a month over month increase, which is in the 6% range if you were to annualize it right now. And so that's just, I think, gives a little bit more credence, I think, to Jerome Powell's tactics of leaving rates higher for longer until you've got more kind of sustained evidence that inflation is really slowing down. So to me, it wasn't bad news per se, but it wasn't the good news that we were probably hoping that it would have been. So the inflation
Yeah.
boogeyman is not completely under control yet.
Yeah, and it was a strange market reaction today. I mean, Tesla aside, I mean, Tesla's doing great, having a nice rebound today after some consolidation. But if you look at the market, it kind of dipped initially and then came way back up to positive and then dipped again. Now it's like sort of flat, just like yo-yoed back and forth, and it's sort of flat. Maybe all the hedges from Friday and Thursday last week, when the market was going down, it feels like there's a lot of people hedging, preparing for a hotter than expected inflation print. Maybe those are all coming off now, the hedges, and so I heard a rumor that Carl Icahn bought $20 million of premium of puts of S&P 500 puts, like 10% out of the money, like $20 million of premium, not like of of exposure, premiums. And if he did that on Thursday or Friday, those are probably worth a lot less now. So I think a lot of
Yeah,
big
I
names
saw that.
were buying exposure. Oh, you saw that too, huh?
Yeah, I saw that too. I
Yeah.
know, one of the guys we follow, uh, Brent Kachuba. I always want to say kombucha, but I know
From
that's not
Spot
right.
Gamma, that guy.
From Spot Gamma, yeah, he kind of mentioned that, and it was 20 million, I think, notional value on those puts, and so that was kind of surprising. I don't know where the Carl Icahn rumor came from, but it's definitely interesting. You're right though. The market reaction was just all over the board this morning. I mean, I was watching kind of pre-market at 8:20, 8:25 right before the CPI numbers came out, and stocks were up pretty big, and then the numbers came out and it just like tanked pre-market and continued to do so when once the market opened, and then we had this crazy Tesla rallied like $13 in half an hour or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So it's like I think the market's not exactly sure what to think because it was very clearly not like amazing news, but it also wasn't terrible, and so you're looking at where it looks like some treasury yields came down a little bit, which is a little bit encouraging. So I think the market is still expecting, at least as of right now, that the Fed's going to have to change course eventually, but it's certainly not next month.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not next month. I mean, we have another CPI print, another big jobs data number, jobs report before their March meeting. And so we'll see what all comes in there. So I guess the terminal rate, it depends on whether it stops at 5% or 6%. It's sort of in the between there. People are speculating. So is it going to be closer to 6% or closer to 5%? The terminal rate, meaning like the highest Fed funds overnight rate, they're going to push it up to and keep it there for a while. They intend to keep it there for a while. So that seems to be the best guesses right now. It wasn't long ago when we thought the terminal rate would be 4%, though. But I guess it could keep creeping up if they think inflation's sticking around. We sort of thought inflation is dead. I still sort of am in that view. Inflation is dead a few weeks ago, but it's going to take several more months of CPI to kind of let that play out. I think month over month CPI numbers, and by inflation is dead, I mean like it's back to 2%, maybe 2 to 3% annualized. And that's sort of where they want it to be. But it could be below that too, potentially, I think, in the next year from now. So I guess time will tell. In terms of the macro market, other than the Fed, which is the biggest thing in the macro market right now, and I would say the next biggest thing is like geopolitical issues, like whether it's Russia, Ukraine, a strategic nuke going or a tactical nuke being set up by Russia at some point, or just something crazy going on there, or all these crazy UFOs. What's going on with these unidentified flying objects? I mean, they're all over the place now. Suddenly, it started with a Chinese spy balloon that we identified, I guess, coming over from China and shot down when it got over, the East Coast finally. And then there's been like, 3 or 4 of these other things over Alaska and Canada and such spotted that are being shot down. what's up with, and the government's acting very strange about it. Like, we don't really know what this is. We're not going to rule out aliens or something. Some senator or some general said. I'm like, that's nuts. Like, why would he even say that and get that? And there's already a bunch of crazy people out there that like think aliens are visiting us. He's just adding fuel to their fire. There's going to be like so many more people ending up in crazy homes because of those comments. I mean, what are they thinking? Like, what's going on there? I mean,
I've got a lot of thoughts on this. So the White
yeah.
House did say that, it's not aliens. I think they said full stop, even it was something like that.
Good. When, this morning or something?
I saw some comments on it was like the press secretary, I think. I think I saw it
Yeah.
yesterday.
But you still have the crazy people that'll say like, even if it was aliens, they'd say that, so.
Well, probably, but like, if it was aliens like visiting us from another, galaxy, do you really think, or star system, do you really think that we'd be able to shoot them down?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
and like there were these unexplained objects, and I don't want to go too much on a tangent here, but there were these things that I think last summer there was a lot of inquiry into. Commander David Fravor saw these things, and they were like objects that were moving way faster than any technology that we understand. And so like there were these unidentified flying objects that there's still really no answers for, and there's lots of sightings of them. To me, that's like the whole aliens thing. This is something completely different. And, whether you agree or disagree that that's like worth investigating on like the, those types of issues, these objects are much more slow moving. And so it's like it's like a completely different class of phenomenon. So like it seems very likely to me that these are just a bunch of Chinese spy balloons, or maybe some other nations. And the reason I think that is, they shot down, or the one that was like they had been tracking for a long time. It came from China. They were actually able to track it from that place of origin. They said I did listen to a Department of Defense call where they were kind of going over some of these questions with various journalists. And apparently what happened is they had these filters to look for threats in U.S. airspace from the NORAD radar system, and essentially you can get false positives by like flocks of birds and geese and things like that, or weather balloons, all sorts of things. And so they had the filters on these radar set to rule out slow moving objects for further investigation.
Yeah.
Well, once they found this, what they kept referring it to the PRC balloon. Once they found that PRC balloon, they went back, changed the settings on all this radar, and started investigating for lower speed objects. And all of a sudden found like a rash of them. I think it was 3 more that they found in just a matter of days. So it's like, this is incredibly unprecedented to shoot down 4 objects within 8 days over, U.S. airspace. This is incredibly unusual, but it does seem more likely than not that like China spies on America, America spies on China. And it's just like, how do you try to get away with that? Well, China might have found a way to just realize that we're detecting these balloons if they were so slow. And so it's, to me, that seems like the most logical explanation. They did leave open the possibility that like it could just be corporations or like academic, studies that were launching these objects that, just got like lost. So it's definitely
how many
not
high school
100%
physics
China.
classes are like launching balloons as an experiment? I get just, they're highly successful maybe, and they go way up and they can't come down. They just float around the atmosphere for a long time. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's, the whole thing is a little strange, a little unfortunate, but there's just been so much strange stuff going on lately. I mean, we had that horrific, train crash in Ohio yesterday too, late yesterday, which is one of the worst environment disasters in decades.
Before we go on to that,
no coverage.
Yeah. Before we go on to that real quick, I do want to touch on that, but the UFO thing, which doesn't mean alien, it just means unidentified, exactly what it means, unidentified flying objects. The reason I think that's a macro market worthy topic is I think you were alluding to it a little bit. Like, we don't know what countries, these are basically like cheap spy satellites, in my opinion, or like backup spy satellite options, or, a cheaper poor man's version of spy satellites. And like countries are maybe putting these things up and they were going under the radar, so to speak, like small enough where we didn't care about it, or at a high enough altitude and small enough where we didn't monitor it. And now we've changed our filter to monitor all these and find all of these things, and we're concerned about it and we're shooting them down. But I could see this getting out of control where other countries are doing the same thing, and then someone shoots down like an airplane by accident or something. I don't know. It's just like remember that plane that got shot down over, I think it was over Ukraine years ago by a Russian militant, force or whatever. That was an accident, but like someone might
Yeah.
some third world military with first world technology might accidentally set off a heat-seeking missile at a real freaking like passenger jet or something, thinking they're shooting down some high altitude balloon from another country, and bam, World War III is getting started again. Like I just feel like there's macro market risk with this type of new kind of military kind of interventions going on. An argument also could be made that there's some advantage to the military in general, military funding, to create this kind of chaos in the press right now, so that like you know voters are less likely to back politicians who want to defund the military, when people are worried that, hey, we need to keep track of our airspace and keep the military funded to make sure there's none of these aliens or spy balloons from other countries, when in reality other countries are spying all over the place with satellites. I mean, look at Starlink sending up thousands, there's satellites all over the space spying on us with probably just as much information as these balloons get, maybe more even. I don't know. But to me, that's the macro market risk, is this escalates to other countries. Like China's already complaining about some balloons in their atmosphere from the US or other places, so other countries all join in and they start shooting down all these, little things in the sky. And it just I don't know, that just seems dangerous to me. It
Yeah.
seems like an
It
accident
is. And
easily could happen.
this is where I think it's probably helpful to be a student of history a little bit, because you had the sinking of the Lusitania in the Atlantic, and in 1915, which kind of increased
Yeah.
American attitudes to join World War One.
Hmm.
And so just there's a lot of stuff right now that seems to be kind of adding increasing the amount of pressure on this coiled spring on all these geopolitical tensions. And so it's a messy time right now for sure, and it does seem like we're increasingly kind of adding fuel to the to the mix here, and just kind of
Yeah.
hoping that it doesn't go off. So yeah, I'd much rather be talking about like fundamentals and Tesla investment, like
Yeah.
all the stuff that we really
Yeah.
can have an advanced understanding. But there's the macro situation is just so interesting right now.
Yeah. The Spanish-American War, someone's referencing. Remember the Maine? Yeah, it's good. Lots of history lessons of this type of thing happening. Accidents turning into, new wars. So, what were you going to touch on with the train derailment? I tried to read up on that a little bit. Tell me your take on that first. Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't dug deep into it too much yet, but it does seem really clear that this is like a huge catastrophic environmental issue. So there was some chloride something thing that they were transporting, and the whole thing just like blew up. I don't know if you saw the images; they're like
Yeah.
horrifying.
Yeah.
It looked like a movie or something like that. And I guess one of the major concerns is that it's contaminating along I think it's the Ohio River, which is like the source of fresh drinking water for 5 million Americans. So there's just potential that this could be kind of a lingering Chernobyl type disaster that has long-lasting implications on a pretty big region of the United States. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't want to comment too much on it because I really haven't dug in too much, but it's a really big deal. It's kind of one of many big deals that seem to be going on right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it should definitely be getting reported in the news, and I think this morning it was getting some news coverage. There's a lot of people on Twitter yesterday, a lot of influencers on Twitter, whether it's Joe Rogan, others saying this should be news coverage. I don't know why the news isn't covering it with that picture of of the train, and some people putting up like maps of all the, this is like Chernobyl, our Chernobyl and stuff. I'm not sure. I tried to dig into it a little bit. I know there was like a area of like 2 miles by 1 mile that all the homes were evacuated, and if some people ended up staying, whether it was like homeless or someone that just didn't want to evacuate, they might have died from the fumes in that area, which sounds horrific. This is awful. But this is 2 miles by 1 mile, the actual area of ground zero, and most 99.9% of people were evacuated. Yeah, any deaths is not good, obviously, but then you have the fallout of the acid rain, but now they're letting people go back they've been testing it, and 5 or 6 days later, they're saying people can go back. It's safe in the actual ground zero area, move back to your homes as of yesterday. So, I think it's an issue that should be covered in the news. But some of the hyperbole I saw yesterday on social media, trying to make sure that this is like as bad as a nuclear attack, or like there's some real hyperbole in social media about this. And as terrible and as tragic as it is, I don't think it's on the level of a nuclear bomb going off or anything close to that.
No,
I think
it's
it's
you,
terrible for that community and for maybe the river nearby, and some of the animals that have been poisoned by it. But my guess is it will be long forgotten, except for that direct community. There's not going to be any major
yeah.
ramifications widespread for years to come, just for that community, that little 2 by 3 mile community, maybe.
I hope you're right. It just the water issue. I'm not an expert on knowing whether or not there will be contamination. Like, will how long will it last, and how far will the contamination spread through the river? But
Yeah.
it brought to mind the tragedy in Flint, where they switched over the
Yeah.
water system,
That reminds me of
and
the
like
Flint, Michigan water crisis. Yeah.
years later, like there's still lead coming through people's faucets, and they're just like trying to fix bottled water, and then like putting filters on people's taps, because like
Yeah.
replacing all these
Yeah.
all the pipes that go into every
Yeah.
single house is just like an enormous infrastructure project
Yeah.
we can't pay for. So I just hope it's not something of that nature, because like there really isn't a good fix for that, other than just like drink bottled water,
Yeah.
slowly like increase your filtering.
There's
So
lots of parts. I mean, where I grew up on the East Coast, in Long Island, there's tons of pesticides in the soil. Who knows what's going on there? A lot of people getting higher rates of breast cancer than anywhere in the country in some of those areas, because they think it's pesticide related. There's all kinds of health issues. This is just another thing added to the mix of major health problems that could come from some man-made chemical fallout in a certain area. So it's sad. I mean, it's not going to just nothing to do with the macro markets, but it's sad. So we should move on to something that's more in our
yeah.
wheelhouse, like Tesla. And Tesla stock consolidated last week, we think, to a large degree, and it's back up today. And yesterday came back after it was down in the morning, but today it's up 4% while the Nasdaq is flat. It seems like very uncorrelated to the market lately. Like the market's down 2%, Tesla's up 2%. Market's down 1%, Tesla's up 2% again. Then the market's up 1%, Tesla's down 3% or something, and then today the market's essentially flat and Tesla's up 4%. So it's very odd, the how it's uncorrelated right now. I mean, over the long run, it's probably very
It's
correlated if you look at like a month chart, but in the last, like, every day, it's very different, it seems, right?
Yeah, the dailies, I've noticed that the dailies are kind of like negative beta. It's like -2, which is like
Yeah.
very unusual. And that never lasts long. I think part of it, you had like some, huge 10% run up days in January on some days when the market was like roughly flat, or even negative. There were a couple days where the market was down and Tesla was up pretty big. So, I think some of it was just like consolidation, as you said, where, okay, now Nasdaq's up, call it 1%, but Tesla, after being up nearly 100%, is just taking
Yeah.
a breather. There's
Yeah.
there's in the long run, like, January was a great month for the for markets, and it was an even better month for Tesla. So I think you're right. Like, in the long term, these things are correlated, but the intraday movements have been very unusual.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of strange to see that.
Very unusual. Um, Do you think it has anything to do with like the Super Bowl? I don't know. I don't think it has anything to do with the Super Bowl, but I mean, there was some spike in interest, probably, retail investors, renewed interest in Tesla that are watching the Super Bowl. I don't know, maybe portfolio managers
Yeah.
are talking about it, but I don't think it has anything to do. The Super Bowl we haven't touched on, but I don't think the stock price has anything to do with the Super Bowl. Do you? I mean, I mean,
No, I
there's,
don't think so. I mean, I'm sure there are a couple trades here and there of people that were like
yeah,
worried about Dan O'Dowd's commercial, or optimistic
yeah,
that Tesla would get more orders because of their the competitors' ads. Like, we clearly know that was an issue last year that really helped Tesla. So, I think there were reasons for optimism and optimism about the Super Bowl, but probably not overly meaningful.
Yeah. And I mean, the Dan O'Dowd commercial, I can't, I showed, I had some people over my house and I showed them the commercial, as some of the first people came over my house, and everyone was like, what is this weird commercial? Like, everyone's caught off. I mean, they all know I'm like a Tesla fanatic, so they're probably just on my side by default because they're coming over my house. But, it just seems like it was a very strange commercial. People are suspicious. People are smarter than you think, and they want to know what your motive is for such a commercial. This guy, like, is this guy just really genuinely good-hearted, trying to warn the world of this terrible technology, spending his own money to do so? No, of course he's got some incentive and motive, and people know that, and they're going to figure that out, I think. And but it is funny. Someone tweeted yesterday, like some popular Miami YouTube talk show, radio show, or something, where there's like a few 100,000 people a day that listen to it. It's like on a daily basis, it's like 5 or 6 guys and girls talking just about whatever the daily events are, regular people, and I'm trying to I'll find the link and retweet it later, but around at the mark where they start talking about the Tesla autopilot in the Super Bowl commercial, a couple of them are like, this is killing people, of course we should ban it, and they're like talking as if it's a matter of fact. It's like, so basically what I'm saying is regular everyday people who are not part of the Tesla Twitterverse may actually buy into that commercial. That's a concern I have, or may actually be influenced. As much as I want to think people are smart and see the incentive, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that I think don't know much about self-driving or Tesla. And, if Tesla's not educating people the other way, I just fear that too many people are going to be thinking it's dangerous without even, just from these types of commercials. I'm not sure that really matters to Tesla's long-term success if their demand is so much higher than their supply anyway. But I don't know. It just concerns me. It just bothers me that, there's enough people out there, forming these opinions with, I would think, because of that, things like that commercial.
Yeah. It's hard to say what impact that will have on the average consumer. I did think it was hilarious that he sponsored this tweet of the video on Twitter. So like he paid Elon essentially to bash Elon's product on Twitter, and then like the community notes was just like the most epic community notes I've ever seen. So it says Dan O'Dowd runs a competing competing company writing self-driving software. Dan's previous attempt to show FSD will run down a child was debunked. Another performed a test and it worked as expected. And Tesla has over 55 million miles driven without any reported injuries. So it was just like 4 really solid points from community notes, just like kind of ripping to shred Dan O'Dowd. So you're like average consumer do that on the Super Bowl, but the good thing is it was kind of limited and it was only in select markets. But still, I do think there's real, kind of regulatory risk around this. NHTSA's doing an investigation. They're devoting a lot of resources to it. And so it's like, I think we need to be realistic that it's at least possible that, NHTSA could come in here and, really take Tesla to task. And I don't know if they could actually order a recall where all of a sudden we couldn't use FSD beta anymore or anything like that. But they might be able to do some things that would make it really unpleasant.
Yeah. I hope that doesn't I hope that doesn't happen. I think it's more of a state by state thing, but NHTSA could do something nationally to make it very difficult. At the same, we add extra hurdles for Tesla and the customers to be able to use it. So yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, what we have to say about the Super Bowl. I saw an interesting stat yesterday.
I was going to take a quick side note on FSD. I was talking to a friend of mine who works at GM, and he's kind of like recently gotten into Tesla, been interested in it. So he was asking me some questions, and so I was explaining to him like just the fact that Tesla in-house, like all the hardware, and they developed their own FSD chip, and they've got an AI team that's like running the neural nets. And he just couldn't believe it. He was like, "Whoa, really? They did all that in house?" I was like, "Yeah, like can you imagine if GM tried to do that?" And he just, without even thinking, he just said, "Oh my gosh, they botched it so badly." So it
Yeah.
was just like,
Yeah. It's a
it was
different.
kind of interesting just to
Yeah.
hear somebody who works there, who sees the culture, who kind of understands the management style, just be like, oh gosh, yeah, like even if we did try to compete, we would fail miserably. So it's just
Yeah.
like Mary Barra's approach kind of makes sense when you think of like what are their options.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
So
agree.
anyway,
It's
just wanted
just
to share that little
another.
anecdote.
No, it's true. Ford, GM, all the legacy automakers, they cannot do the same technology. This isn't the same game where you can just outsource everything, and you just have to have the IP on the engine. Like this is a completely different thing. It's like a company that manufactures ovens suddenly having to manufacture refrigerators. It's completely different technology, and it's in the
But
kitchen
people say
still.
like,
It's
well,
used
you just
for
it's an
cooking.
appliance that changes the temperature of something. So
Yeah,
like we're gonna be the best at that.
yeah, yeah,
No,
exactly. So,
we've never done a cooling element before, but it's just
yeah,
like the opposite of heating. So we'll figure it out.
yeah. It looks the same, a car. It's used for the same thing, transportation, but the mechanisms that make it work are completely different. It's a
Completely
completely
different.
different,
Yeah.
software. So it's funny. It's like it's really part of Darwin's plan here with capitalism in effect. Here is like investing is like the investors that can see this and understand the difference between Tesla and the legacy automakers and stick to Tesla long term. They're hugely rewarded and taking money directly from the people who are shorting Tesla, who cannot
Yeah.
see it and they're shorting it. So it's just a nice exchange of wealth for capitalism here for people that can actually see the big picture of what's going on, long term. On any given day or even any given year, it might not be that way, but over any 5-year period, I think it would turn out that way with Tesla. So,
Yeah.
um, anyway, a couple of things we wanted to touch on, but I think we want to leave some time for Q&A too. And one quick stat I saw on CNBC, I just wanted to cite, which I thought people would find interesting, is that Tesla represents 24% of all individually purchased stocks by retail investors. That was a stat I saw CNBC put up yesterday, and that just astounded me. 24% of all individually purchased stocks by retail investors is actually Tesla stock right now. It's like at an all-time high. So that's just really interesting to me. It just shows how smart the retail investors are. I'm, I think it's a great thing. Retail investors are buying Tesla at this price even and getting a good deal, and they're going to be hugely rewarded, I think, in the long run. And I'm in big favor of that. The little guy. And the retail investors aren't always the little guy. Sometimes they can just be like really high net worth individuals and so forth too. But I think there's a lot of people just dipping their toes in the stock market for the first time, and the first stock they buy is probably Tesla. That's my guess too. So
Yeah.
that was a cool
Well, I think
stat.
people can like Wall Street has to kind of stick their neck out to recommend, Tesla because it's trading at a high multiple or they've got like
Yeah,
a volatile CEO or like just they have to grow at levels that we've never seen before in order to justify the share price. So I don't know, that makes me nervous. But like
yeah,
retail isn't kind of in comment about, oh, am I going to look stupid if I recommend this? They're just thinking, well, clearly like EVs are like going to be the future, and
yeah,
clearly Tesla is the best at making those. And there's
yeah,
varying levels of sophistication from there. But like the basic thesis is like, well, yeah, why would you invest in a company whose business is dying when
yeah,
like the whole is just about like we're on the verge, like we're at this inflection point of EV adoption. So
yeah.
I think retail is kind of uniquely poised to understand the moment that we're in and just be willing, I should say, to stick their neck out on it. So that's
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Yeah, exciting. One thing I want to touch on is we want to talk about is Investor Day coming up, right? And I don't know if
Yeah.
you're able to share your screen, Matt, but Matt was, tweeting about the magic eye effect on this Tesla invite, and there's something there. Matt, are you able to share your screen and kind of like walk us through what you were
Yeah. And
thinking
so
or what you were
just for
seeing?
background for those who maybe didn't see, Tesla has that invite which has all the it's like thousands of like body sides on it in racks as the background. But somebody noticed that Alex Oha, if I'm not mistaken, on Twitter, that it's actually like a stereograph or like magic eye. So I don't know if you guys had those books when you were kids, like you kind of like let your eyes glaze over and like
Yeah.
you see a pattern emerge out of the page. Tesla's Investor Day invite actually has that feature in it. So I'll share my screen, kind of show for those who couldn't see like exactly what we're talking about. But so here is the Investor Day invite, and what I was noticing was there was like a very deep gouge right here, kind of in this bar, which
The
is like
first bar on the
these.
left. You made like 4 yellow bars in there to show it's
Yeah,
kinda,
there's four.
the
So
investor
the
invite doesn't
deepest
have those
one,
bars, but you're creating them.
yeah. So the deepest kind of groove is this one here,
In the
second from the
middle?
left that I've highlighted. The
Okay.
middle, yep. That was like offset a bit by there was like 3 rows of the cars on the left. There were these really too deep or too wide that was like very far offset, and like the second and the third one over here were pretty close to the same depth. It looked like, but there was a slight difference. And so what I noticed is if you actually just count like how many cars were here, there were like 3 in this column, there were 2 cars in this column, there were 2 cars in this column, and then 3 cars in this column, and then back here, like these ones were just like back to back, didn't pop out at all.
Mhm.
So if you're just reading that as a date, it'd be 3/2/23, which is the date right after March 1st. But that's just total speculation. I mean, another answer that I've heard of, like, why would they go to the trouble of actually making one of these images, um,
Mhm.
is, well, it could be something related to full self-driving, because FSD is essentially taking a 2D image and creating like a 3D vector space, um,
Mhm.
and doing planning around that. So it might be just something as simple as saying we're getting very good at representing a 2D image in 3D space. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I don't like to go too deep into kind of like Tesla numerology, like the whole 12.9 thing
Yeah.
that we said. Rob
Yeah.
Maurer also covered some good speculation on, like, Elon Musk said the fuel looks bright, and then if you look at these letters, like some of them are bright, and the ones that aren't spell toy, which relates to the casting, because the casting was originally just from like car toys that were single cast. So there's lots of different theories. I don't think we really know, but I thought it was at least interesting, and I'm not sure that everyone has noticed yet that there is obviously there's the Tesla logo that pops out, but if you do kind of make your eyes go across, you can actually see a lot more detail of like 3D dimensionality than appears here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. The magic eye. When you mentioned that, I was like, wow, that's cool. There definitely is something embedded in there. And so, yeah, I mean, the 3/2/23. That's also, what do they call it, an anagram numerology? 3/2/23. It's like a weird,
Yeah.
like race car spelled backwards is race car. So I don't know. It's just an interesting date, I guess, in a lot of ways, or interesting number too. So, yeah, it's
One of my secret skills is I can say words backwards. I don't know why, but I can just do that.
really. Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. So you just like imagine the
Not
word and you
useful.
say it backwards? Okay. Well,
Yeah, I don't know,
that's
for whatever
cool.
reason I can just, somebody says a word and I can just imagine it spelled backwards and just
Wow.
try to pronounce it however it would be spelled. Not
Okay.
helpful.
Yeah. So the magic eye effect on that invite, there's something there. The future is bright. He said that. There's something with the word bright, him saying that, I think too. Elon said that in one of his tweets. Yeah, I wonder if it has to do with solar. Maybe just, and then he mentioned yesterday, investor day is the broadest term investor, everyone on earth or something. So maybe he's going to, like,
Yeah.
we're all investors in the planet earth and we need to invest in the planet earth's long-term goal of sustainability, and so we have this Tesla plan of Tesla solar roofs with power walls and a car and an HVAC system all in one, package or something. I wonder if there's something like that, or that he's just going to present that future,
Yeah.
that Tesla's going to, build out.
They
Yeah, curious.
They did redesign the Tesla Solar website. I don't know if you saw that just this week. It's been
Hmm,
redesigned. It looks really nice. So it does
hmm,
seem like solar seems to be like the redheaded stepchild right now that nobody's talking about. It's still so small. It's really not profitable. Solar roof is a long way from ramping. I thought they'd be much further along by now, but it looks like they're taking a breather on it. But
yeah,
yeah, it's they're not going to give up on solar. We're all
yeah,
excited about Megapack and like stationary storage, and I think for good reason. But solar eventually, I think, is going to be a really big piece of the pie too, because you can't just have storage. Like, I see a lot of people comparing like peaker plants to storage and be like, oh, if we just replace all the peaker plants with storage, we'll be fine. But I'm like, you still need to generate the electricity. Like if you just like got rid of all the power plants in the world and put a bunch of batteries, that wouldn't solve anything. Like you need generation. So solar is a really important part of this that I'm excited to eventually see that get a little bit more love.
Yeah. And he has been commenting in the last week or two more on the solar roofs that were installed recently. Like, he's been saying, "Oh, nice
Yeah, I
install," or
noticed
that,
that. Yeah, looks
So
good. Yeah.
maybe there's something to that. Maybe he's, going to reemphasize ramping that up now. Maybe he's finally happy with the product and, some kind of minimum viable install like efficiency that they can just move forward with from here or something. So yeah, we'll see. Anything else you want to talk about with the speculation on that stuff, or should we just go to Q&A? What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, let's do Q&A.
Okay. All right. We'll have Alec put up the questions. What probability, from Bob Adams 1414 on Twitter, what probability do you give Tesla to achieve regulatory approval level 4 autonomy by 2030? I don't know if it'll be classified as that, but I would give it 90% probability 2030. That's a ways away. I would say 90%. What do you think, Matt?
That's oddly the exact number I had in my mind.
Okay.
So I don't know. Yeah, like part of me thinks that might be slightly too high, but it seems about right to me. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Seems.
V11 going out any time now, and I have a feeling that's going to be the architecture that they just iterate against, and so I think the pace of improvement is going to get way quicker from here. So,
yeah, I would say 50-50 by 2026. That's my 50-50 line. 2026 sometime that year.
2026.
We'll see.
All right.
So
I'll take the over on that. I'd say 27 maybe. But.
Okay. From Super Jamon 31 on Twitter, how you doing? Best engineers seem to be rushing to OpenAI, thus Elon anger towards Andre. If the previous statement is true, should we worry for full self-driving? And a bonus crazy take: can OpenAI end up coming up with a better working FSD than Tesla? That's a good question to entertain. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly like these AI wars going on, and that was kind of my take that Andre joining OpenAI may not have been as random or just as like might not have been as simple as him just deciding one day, hey, I'd like to be part of this. I'll join OpenAI. I kind of think that there's a chance, OpenAI came to recruit him a year ago and said, hey, what can we do to get you on our side? We know you're the best at this, and you're being overworked at Tesla, blah, blah, blah. We'll pay you X crazy amount of money, and this is what you love to do anyway. And Andre was like, well, let me take a sabbatical from Tesla and then leave Tesla for 6 months, and then I'll join you or something. And that's kind of how I think it more than likely played out. I think they recruited him, and it took a while. And it makes sense. If I'm running OpenAI, I want the most well-known AI people working for me so I can recruit more AI talent. Just like Elon wants to have the best talent. Recruiting the best talent is like a big part of running a long-term successful business on something so instrumental like AI or full self-driving. So I kind of think that's what happened. And I think Elon maybe, him not liking Andre's post, or not, maybe he's suspicious of the same type of thing, or maybe he knows something more than we do about how that connection happened with Andre going to OpenAI that he's not happy about. And he's also not completely happy with OpenAI, with Microsoft taking a big part of it and it being for profit now and such. So there's a lot there.
He's been commenting a lot on some of the woke results that OpenAI will put out there.
Yeah.
So Elon, I think you're onto something here. I wasn't sure exactly what you meant, but when you first talked about this maybe a week ago, the more I've thought about it and kind of looking at Elon's behavior, he unfollowed Andre on Twitter, and it does seem like there's just a couple months ago, it was, oh, I might go back to work at Tesla and you're welcome anytime. And there was like this very congenial relationship. And it definitely seems like things kind of took a hard turn when Andre went to OpenAI. So I think you're right that there's a decent chance that OpenAI actively recruited Andre away from Tesla, and the kind of sabbatical thing was probably a way. I saw Martin Muldoon in the chat say that he was exhausted from working at Tesla. I think it can be true that he was both exhausted from working at Tesla and OpenAI recruited him. And so like the sabbatical was a way to kind of, not directly,
Yeah.
anchor. Cause you can imagine like if they just poached him right from Tesla and like Andre put in his 2 weeks and then just went to work at OpenAI, like
It'd be
Elon
look
would like
really bad.
flip
Yeah.
out. And you don't want
Yeah.
Elon mad at you. Like,
Yeah. You don't want to burn that bridge. And Andre knows that.
yeah.
He wants to keep that bridge alive. And yeah. So I don't know. I feel like there's more to the story than what we're led to believe. There almost always is in everything, right? We're not just you just can't take everything at face value. A lot of the things we're told of why someone's doing this or that publicly, there's a lot more to it to the story a lot of times, and we just aren't privy to that information. So this could be one of those times, especially where there could be a lot more to the story. That's all we're saying. And then what was that? The second part of the question was, could OpenAI overtake Tesla on full self-driving beta? I don't think so. I think the real world, um, the way I think of it is, full self-driving is like building the large language model for real world driving, and getting the data for that is not easy. A large language model, getting the data from that, scraping it off the internet is not hard. There's so much data available, but getting all the data into your computers, you can't do it from simulations. I mean, people have been trying to do it just from simulation, but there's just so many odd ins and out cases. The real world just seems to operate differently. And Tesla is at the forefront of collecting all that data. And I think that's what that's what full self-driving to me sort of is in a nutshell. If I had to compare the two, it's like a large language model they're building out for full self-driving. That's going to be like, it can't just be 99.9% accurate though. It's got to be 99.99999% accurate. That's the thing, because if it makes a mistake, it's much worse than just giving someone a false idea with a large language model that makes a mistake.
Yeah, I don't think they've got the data for it. I mean, I think what ChatGPT has done really well is like ingesting like almost the whole internet, and like using that to infer what is the best way to respond to a given prompt. That's just a much better or a much different problem than trying to see, okay, I'm in the middle of this road that nobody has ever seen before, and like how I safely navigate it with oncoming traffic and all these different variables. So Tesla very clearly has like the best data set in the world for that problem. So, I don't think it's a risk.
Yeah. All right. Next question here from Weiss Ian on Twitter. Whenever Elon talks about the 3 pillars of a sustainable society, he mentions solar and wind. Also, he often says that Tesla has a very exciting product pipeline. Do you think Tesla is working on a product for the wind energy sector? Oh, that's a good question, Matt. I'll leave that to you. That's your kind of expertise.
I'm very passionate about this, and I think the answer is a hard no. This is like we were just talking about how Tesla's got the best data in the world for driving. Tesla's got no data on wind, and I think people don't realize how important data is when you're designing something like a wind turbine. GE and Vestas and the world leaders, they've got I don't know the exact number, but like probably hundreds of gigawatts of plants up and running over many decades. And like each one of those, they've got turbine by turbine data of like, here's the wind speed coming in at this plant, at this site. And they've, over the course of many decades, these ridiculously fine-tuned changes to the design of the fiberglass blades in order to better optimize the wind resource. And they've got different designs for medium wind resource areas versus high wind resource areas to try to maximize the output. And then on top of that, they're doing the generators, the gearboxes, the entire like software system, which Tesla could probably do that part of it. It's not that big of a deal. But like Tesla to start with no data on a problem like that in a frankly not very high margin industry, just seems like wishful thinking, or saying like, well, they did solar so they could do wind too. Solar is a very simple product compared to wind. And like, I think it's important for people to realize too, like solar is going to win out over wind. The best part is no part, and solar is the only generating asset that doesn't have moving parts. Every other, generating resource, whether it's wind that, like spins a rotor, which spins a generator to create electricity versus, like a natural gas plant does the same thing. A coal plant does the same thing. You're spinning, a generator around a motor around inside a generator to make electricity. Solar is just a much more simple way to do that, and it's going to be more cost effective. You're not going to have as many maintenance costs going forward. So I'll eat my shoe and eat my hat, as Peter Beck would say, if Tesla ever, produces a large scale wind turbine. Now, maybe what they could do is like a small. I don't know if you've ever seen those like micro turbines that are like almost stationary. They're like kind of like cylindrical. Maybe they could do one of those like for residential purposes. Maybe that wouldn't completely surprise me, but definitely not like these 90-meter tall, just like massive winter. They've got no competitive advantage there, and it's like really complicated engineering and construction management and lots of stuff that, and it would just I would be really concerned if they went this way.
Yeah. I think wind would be a big surprise. It'd be hard to keep that a secret, that development. I would be a big surprise. It's possible, I suppose, but yeah, I mean, I didn't realize all the data that you need and all that. Interesting. So thanks for educating us, Matt. Matt used to work on wind turbines, so he knows that pretty well. So the next question. There has been some chat. This is from Barbecued Veggies on Twitter, one of our favorite guys. There's been some chatter about Tesla's deferred tax allowance in Q4 inflating net income. Could you elaborate on how this works, and what are your thoughts on this? Matt, I will leave this one to you as well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I haven't seen this particular chatter that he's talking about, so maybe I'll just talk about it more generally. But essentially, there's deferred tax assets and there's net operating loss carry forwards. So Tesla, as you guys all know, was losing money for all of its history up until 2019. And so they are essentially allowed to have what's called a net operating loss carry forward. So the previous losses that have accumulated, they can use those to offset their kind of current period taxable income. And so that's a way that they can minimize their taxes that they have to pay to the federal government. That's one of many what's called deferred tax assets. So it's something kind of on their balance sheet that they can use to avoid paying future taxes. So, I mean, that's generally kind of how that works. There's a lot of changes going on right now with the Inflation Reduction Act, because there is an introduction of this commercial alternative minimum tax, which kind of does away with a lot of those deferred tax assets. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that there's complete resolution on this. I mean, this is a question that was asked of Zach Kirkhorn on the Q4 call, and he said they're watching it closely. But if you actually look at their accounting on that deferred tax asset line, there didn't seem to be any major changes to like the allowance, which is like what you net against it. They actually have more of these deferred tax assets than they think they'll be able to monetize. So they take a discount to those. So yeah, I mean, that's maybe generally how it works. If somebody has a more specific question or can talk about what the chatter is relating to, I'd be happy to speculate, but I hadn't seen that.
Yeah. All right. Next question from Tesla Economics. How you doing? I'm wearing, anyone recognize this shirt here? It looks like the same as that's because it's from Tesla Economics' new website. He's selling some pretty cool merchandise. If anyone wants to go to his website, maybe we'll put the link in the show notes later. But yeah, thanks. Nice shirt. It fits well. It's a large. It fits me pretty well. I just got it yesterday in the mail. From Tesla Economics. It seems Starlink is becoming cash flow positive and will be making money in 2023. What are your thoughts on it IPOing soon, and how Tesla retail investors will be able to get a piece? I think they're setting it up to IPO soon. I think as soon as the market becomes favorable for IPOs again, which hopefully is this year, if not this year, then next year. As soon as we start seeing other IPOs happening more regularly again, I think Starlink will be in the discussions, and I think they're ready. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great for Rocket Lab exposure as well. But for Starlink to be publicly available, to be traded, probably have 100 billion valuation or something like that, I would imagine. Um, so between 50 billion and 100 billion is my guess, is where it would IPO at. Maybe it would IPO at like 50 billion, but trade on day one at 100 billion. You know how that happens, right? But maybe I would be a bigger fan if he wants to be a favor of retail investors. They should really do the Dutch auction method for the IPO. Um, I think Google did that years ago. Some other companies, I think Roblox did something like that. Some companies do that. It's a different way to go public, where it's more, I feel, democratic for all investors, but there's not as crazy fees generated to the investment banks. And so they're not quite as incentivized to, bring you up with their institutional investors and such. So, there's pros and cons. But I think from a first principles point of view, which I know Elon likes, it makes a lot more sense. So we'll see what happens. I think that would be exciting. As soon as it starts trading on the public markets, I think a lot of retail investors will start buying it. I don't know if it's a traditional IPO or Dutch auction IPO. I'm not sure where the stock Starlink goes from there, but it seems to have a long-term future and be worth a lot more in the future. Any thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be next year at the earliest, personally. I mean, the current market environment is really not conducive to,
Mm-hmm.
a real big IPO, I think. So, and plus you'll just give it more time to, get to really impressive metrics. I mean, let's just say for sake of argument that like they're cash flow negative Q1 and Q2, but by Q3 and Q4, you make up that difference. And maybe they've made, positive cash flow from Starlink of like $1 billion in, throughout the year. It's like investors are going to like definitely like that. And I'm sure it would get priced a lot more premium. But if you fast forward to next year and you're just like really increasing the amount of quarterly, cash flow generation, then you can go at the end of like for the full year 2024, and you've generated say $15 million of cash flow. I'm just making these numbers up, but to me,
Yeah.
that's like you'd have massive year over year growth and just really strong, like positive cash flow, and presumably your need for like continued launches is going to slow down eventually. So I think you're going to get a better valuation if you kind of de-risk the business for one extra year. So I kind of suspect it won't be until 2024, 2025. But yeah, I'm excited for whenever it happens, because I would definitely love to invest.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next question from Martin Muldoon. How you doing, Martin? Question: why has Rocket Lab gone radio silent? So odd. I'm not sure they've gone radio silent. I mean, I think they had that Wallops launch last month, and they've announced, I've followed them on Twitter. They've announced some like new partnerships or new agreements for business, I think, recently. So, the stock itself, it's close to $5 right now. But yeah, I mean, it's just in a range bound from $4 to $5, it seems like, for the most part, the last year, almost. So I don't know, Matt, do you have any thoughts about this? Or it's just sort of like, it's sort of
Yeah.
like the way I think of Rocket Lab is like a venture capital investment. You just gotta invest. If you want to invest in it, you got to know it's for the long term, and you got to like set and forget it. Sort of like you can follow the business but not look at the stock price, and then over a 5-year, 10-year
Yeah.
horizon, you kind of find out whether you made a big gain or not.
So I do kind of agree with Martin, actually, and he did say in the comments, no new launches, and
Okay.
I think that's the surprising thing, because they've got almost $500 million in backlog. They've got 3 launch sites now, and so it's just odd that they don't have um, like a new launch like announced.
Hmm.
They've got with a backlog that big, and what they've really been talking about in the last couple calls and at Investor Day was um, being able to increase their kind of speed and like
Their cadence.
reflexiveness. Yeah. So
Mhm.
like if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, our satellite's finally ready, I want to launch as soon as possible, they were saying they could maybe turn that around in as quick as 3 months. And so for nothing to be announced, given the size of the backlog and like their launch pads are open, they've got 3 of them now. To me, that does just seem odd.
Mm.
They did like an announcement yesterday that they got a new like investor relations lead. I think he was an analyst from Barclays before that they added. but that's not really material. It's just a new IR guy. So I'm modestly surprised given what they've been talking about of backlog growing. I think last quarter was actually the first time in a long time it had shrunk, but I was expecting much higher cadence based on their commentary. It's a little odd. I do agree with Martin.
Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on this the Q4 earnings, which they have not announced a date for yet. So I would assume it's going to be in the next couple of weeks. They'll probably announce
it.
No,
it's February 28th. They've
announced
that.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was checking Yahoo Finance, it says not available still. So Yahoo Finance, I guess, didn't update, but February 28th. Okay, so it's 2 weeks from today. So hopefully we can learn more. Maybe we can be on the Q&A and ask this question. Maybe I don't think they use say.com, but maybe we can somehow get that question asked on the earnings call. I've heard some smaller funds and such ask questions. Maybe somehow me and you, Matt, can get on the earnings call and try to get this question in, because it's a good question.
Let's do it.
Why is their cadence slowing down if they have such a backlog, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's do next question. Here is from Elijah Madonia. Question: do you think Master Plan Part 3 will cover how Tesla can get to, say, $10 trillion valuation, or focused mainly on output? Master Plan Part 3 is going to be unveiled on Investor Day. That's 2 weeks from tomorrow. Crazy how fast it's going to come up. So I think it'll be left to investors to kind of calculate the 5 or 10 trillion market cap valuation that is warranted for Tesla. I would be surprised if Elon mentions a specific valuation number. He might reference like the biggest company in the world, or bigger than Apple and Saudi Aramco combined. He might reference something like that again, but I'd be surprised if he references like 10 trillion market cap. He could, but I would be surprised. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, I think he's commented on that on the last 2 earnings calls. But I kind of think it's going to be, we already know that it's going to be about how to reach massive scale. And I think those two go together. Like the way that you reach 10 trillion is by having massive scale. Like you're not going to reach a $10 trillion valuation by selling 1.6 million vehicles a year and like maybe FSD getting a little bit better. You really need to be a lot bigger scale on auto and on energy, and to be able to do so like while lowering profits and maintaining or increasing margins. And so I think that's a lot of it is just going to be how do they remain cost competitive and continue to be the leaders in excellent manufacturing, because that's really what it comes down to is how do you scale and how do you lower your costs, because that's ultimately what's going to lead to the valuation. So I have a feeling they're going to have something weird up their sleeves. The more I'm thinking about it, like Elon's comment was so strange of like the broad sense of investors, where he's really like, those are really just stakeholders, not investors. But he seems to be thinking about things on a planetary scale and like ramping to just ridiculous levels. So I'm curious. I really can't wait, but I don't know. I don't know exactly what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, the lithium supply constraint concern is a big one, so we'll see if that gets addressed somehow, right? That's something that we've all been paying close attention to.
I'd be concerned if they don't address that. I'm sure they will, because they have this lithium processing mine. They've talked about extraction from clay before, but it's not clear at all that that's close to commercial viability, let alone like massive scale. So in my mind, they really need to address that, because they're currently 2025.
Yeah,
but
currently we see that as the limiting factor, which Jordan is the name for his channel, which is a good name.
I just had his little theme song playing in my head when you said that.
Yeah, me too.
A little globe like pulsing.
Yeah. So we'll probably hear lots of lithium videos from the limiting factor, Jordan, in the future, I would imagine. So we'll see. I mean, unless Tesla has some crazy announcement about something with lithium. So, all right, let's do one more question. We went on a little longer than normal because we had a late start. Sorry about that. From Sesha on YouTube comments: will Tesla recognize more FSD revenue in Q1 2023? What will be the impact if they do not? That's a good question. I think they're going to be recognizing, from my understanding, and Matt, I'm going to let you be, have the final say because you know much more about this than me. But for my limited understanding is they had sort of like a extra recognition in Q4, and because of the new, I can't remember exactly how much it was, a few hundred million or something, not quite a billion,
It
or
was
I
like
can't
5 or
remember
600
exactly.
million, I want to say. It was
Yeah,
slightly less than we were expecting.
yeah, slightly less. And maybe they'll have a little more of that extra recognition in Q1 because of new features with V11 or something. But at some point, they're not going to have that extra recognition from the backlogged FSD, payers. They're just going to be going forward every month. It'll be just be 60 or 80% or whatever will be of all the new FSD orders will be, logged for that quarter as opposed to deferred to the future. So I'm not sure about Q1, I guess is my short answer. So Matt, what do you think? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think there's going to be a meaningful amount of recognition from the deferred revenue balance. Like you say, maybe like it wouldn't surprise me if there's say 100 million of incremental recognition. Now they finally done the highway piece, in North America. But it seems more likely to me that a good chunk of the remaining unrecognized balance is on like the European and like all of the worldwide international, take rates that FSD sales, which have like very limited functionality right now. It probably is a little bit more from like the auto park and actually smart summon, like some of those features that once they roll those out, I think recognize a little bit more from the US sales. But I think in the short term, probably what's going to be more impactful is that any US sales of FSD now, you'll be able to recognize a higher percentage of those. So just like some basic math that I'm doing in my head. So apologies if it's wrong, but let's say they, like, for argument's sake, just sell 500,000 cars in a given quarter, take rate of 10% in the US, so that'd be 50,000 at, and let's say they can recognize an incremental, 10% of that FSD sales than they otherwise would have. So 50,000. Oh, now my math is going to get screwed up. Times $15,000 per sale. And actually, no, it'd only be times the incremental 1,000. So it'd be an extra $50 million of profitability just from kind of new sales that they're able to recognize a higher port of the FSD sales from. So that's going to be a benefit that kind of continues going forward. But I think it's going to, 50 million is small relative to the, several hundred million that they were recognizing for these one-offs. So, but we have more of that probably Q2, Q3, something like that. I'd expect another big chunk gets recognized. But we'll just have to keep an eye out for it because these timelines are always fluid.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep a close eye on it. Matt's on the case there. And I guess that's it for this week. Tomorrow, Roblox has their earnings. And then next Wednesday, Lemonade has their earnings. And the Wednesday after that is the Investor Day. So we got back-to-back crazy stuff each week going on for us to keep a close eye on. Rocket Lab, Tuesday, 2 weeks from today. So, the next 2 weeks will be fun for us, Matt. That's for sure. A lot to talk about. Tesla at the moment is at close, it was at, I think it reached the high of today of 204, like 80 while we were talking. It's at 202.65 right now. So it's a good day for Tesla, up 4% still. After some probably some healthy consolidation, much needed. So maybe setting the table for another run up into the Investor Day. I guess we'll see. The macro market, if it behaves and does well, I can see Tesla rising. But none of this is investment advice, of course. Tesla could also go right back down to 150 or below, easily. So we just don't know. So, all right. Anything else you wanted to say, Matt?
No, I've got a list of dad jokes actually, but it's downstairs. So maybe next week I'll try to grab
Next week. All right. Sounds good. All right, guys.
All right.
We'll